Ebony stood staring at this man named Boris who she had been forced to marry. His former enthusiasm had vanished when he had realized that she was a fallen princess. Elsie turned to them and said, "Let's get some food for both of you before you head off to wherever you will be going when you leave the castle." Ebony laughed at Boris. "Don't you like the prize you won today?" she taunted. "Come on. It will probably be the best food you have eaten in years." She followed Elsie, not looking behind her. She could hear him as he shuffled along. In the dining hall, she sat at the table further from the doorway, where she wouldn't be seen easily by anyone passing in the hallway. Boris shuffled to the table and started to pull out a chair to sit at the same table. "I don't think so." "Go find another table so I can eat without smelling you," she ordered. Boris hung his head. "Yes, my lady," as he went to another table in view of the hallway. "Ugh," Ebony commented to Nova. "Everyone is going to see him in here." A couple of the younger kitchen maids popped their heads out of the same door to the kitchen, where Elsie had gone to order someone to bring them their food. Ebony gave them a mean glare when they whispered and giggled to each other. "It's nicer when you can't see them talking smack about you, isn't it?" Nova spoke softly in Ebony's mind. Before Ebony had lost her station, all the whispering had taken place where she couldn't observe it. Now the servants were emboldened and didn't try to hold their gossiping about her a secret. They laughed at her maid and pointed their fingers loudly, calling others from the kitchen to look at the man the former princess had been forced to marry. Ebony kept glaring as more of the young girls were getting ready to call more attention to her. Suddenly, the head royal chef of the palace came up behind them. "Get back to work," he commanded. "There is too much to be done in the kitchen for you to stand around gawking." They scattered like frightened mice at his booming voice. He left, but not before taking a long look into the dining area. He scoffed and shook his head before heading back into the kitchen. Boris looked ashamed at the way he was being put on display. Ebony was feeling shame also, but hid it with a haughty look on her face. Another girl walked out carrying 2 loaded plates of food. She looked in confusion at the newly married couple sitting at different tables. She walked over and stood beside Boris as she set one of the plates in front of him. Quickly she backed away and brought Ebony hers and gave her a pitiful glance. "He smells so pleasant, doesn't he?" The girl's shock was apparent. She hadn't expected that Ebony would speak to her. She shook her head in disbelief and nearly ran from the room. "Enjoy the food," Ebony said ironically. "It looks like they fed us from the food they made for my family." Ebony knew the servants usually ate cheaper cuts of meat or pork, but on their plates were large steaks, nicely seasoned stewed potatoes, and other vegetables. "Are you enjoying our wedding feast?" Boris looked uncomfortable at the reference she made to the royal family. He picked at the food. Ebony, though, was eating the meal like it was her last one. One of the kitchen maids, who had been making fun of them earlier, poked her head back through the door. "Get us some wine," Ebony ordered. "No," Boris ordered the kitchen maid. "Bring us water." He spoke firmly in a tone that was almost as if he was in control. Ebony laughed. "I want wine and I will have wine. We have a long journey. Wine will dehydrate you." Boris turned to the girl who was standing like a deer in flight mode. "Bring us both water." The girl bolted from the dining hall and ran back into the kitchen. "She had better bring me some wine or else." "Or else what?" Boris began cutting into his steak violently. He no longer looked ashamed. His actions portrayed anger. The girl came back with water for the 2 of them. Ebony decided not to poke the bear anymore. She used the water to choke down the delicious food she no longer had an appetite for. Captain Geralt walked into the room. He saw that they were sitting separately. He was torn between addressing Ebony or the man she had been married to. He walked over to Boris. "I have a bag being prepared for you at the gates. What do you prefer to hunt with?" Before Boris could answer, Ebony yelled from her table. "Make sure you pack me a bow and quiver full of the finest arrows available. I want a short blade made of the finest steel my father has, and I want a large hunting knife with a leather sheath I can tie around my waist." Captain Geralt looked horrified. "I am so sorry. I apologize for her impertinence." Boris raised his bushy eyebrows and shrugged his shoulders. "Give her what she wants. I may not always be around to protect her. Give me the same, except give me a long blade and a spear. Make sure she has a sheath for her sword also." He looked at Captain Geralt unceremoniously. I am assuming we are receiving provisions such as food and a couple of blankets for the cold nights. Yes, replied Captain Geralt. Is there anything you want specifically? Boris didn't think too long. I will need quite a bit of dried meat and salt pork. Maybe some dried beans and dried fruit if you have something like that. Ebony laughed. Some dry tea, maybe? She said, mimicking him. Captain Geralt ignored her stupid outburst. He leaned into Boris. In other words, basic army grub. Boris gave him a grin and nodded. Captain Geralt left to see that everything would be ready for the couple when they had finished eating. What were you chatting about so secretively? Ebony wanted to know. Boris stood up and didn't say anything. He stood by the door and waited for Ebony. She took her time choking down the rest of her meal. She had stuffed herself, and she was beginning to regret it. She just wanted a nap. Boris said nothing as he waited for her to finish. Elsie walked out of the kitchen. Captain Geralt sent one of the girls to the kitchen to let you know that he has your stuff ready at the gate. Ebony stood up. I guess I am as ready as I will ever be. She walked past Elsie. Give Mum my love. Boris started walking down the hallway. You sure you know where you are going? She mocked, falling in step behind him. Do you? Ebony wasn't sure what to think of this boorish man who quite suddenly seemed to be a sarcastic brute. She liked the timid, scared person better. In front of Boris, she saw Tomas leading them and rolled her eyes. No wonder he acted like he knew where he was going. There were a few more people on the castle grounds. Once again, Ebony was the center of attention along with her mate. They got to the gates with no incidents. Captain Geralt was watching for them. Here are the things you requested. There were 2 large leather bags on the ground beside him. Which bag has the weapons? Captain Geralt pointed to the bag closest to Boris. Open that bag and get your stuff on you. Are you serious? Ebony said aghast. You really want me to wear weapons? We might get attacked by angry men. I guess you will have to protect me. Boris shrugged his shoulders. Ebony leaned back and laughed loudly. This is rich. I'm guessing you realize how strong my dragon is. I probably will have to protect you. She untied the top of the bag. She dug around until she found the hunting knives. She picked the largest one and strapped it to her waist. Next, she took the short blade and pulled it out of its sheath. It felt well balanced. The blade glinted in the sunlight. She flipped it around in her hand 6 times or so and slid it back into its sheath. Satisfied it was a good sword, she strapped it onto the opposite side of the hunting knife. She pulled out the quiver and filled it with arrows that had fallen out into the bag. She set them on the ground beside the bow. You didn't get any armor. Boris scoffed. If you let something get close enough that you need armor, you deserve to die. Ebony ignored that last comment. She secured the quiver to hang on her back and slung the bow over her shoulder. I'm ready, she announced. Boris strapped the knife and sword on. He equipped himself with a long blade, bow and full quiver much in the same way Ebony had. Before equipping himself with the bow, he opened the other large bag. He pulled out 2 large knapsacks, 4 large flashes filled with water, and 2 large woolen blanket rolls tied up with a strap that could be slung over a shoulder. Who is going to carry all that? Ebony asked, curiosity getting the best of her. Boris looked her dead in the eye. I am going to carry my weapons, my knapsack, blanket roll, and 2 water flasks. If you want to eat or drink, I suggest you grab your knapsack and water flasks. If you don't want to sleep on the bare ground, you had better grab that blanket roll too. Ebony side-eyed him. It's your job to provide for me. Provision is right beside you. I can't force you to utilize it, but I can tell you, if you don't bring what was provided for you, I am not sharing. Ebony scooped up the blanket roll as well as the rest of her stuff. You don't have to worry, she snarked. I have no desire to share your blanket roll with you. Captain Geralt ordered the castle gates to be open when he observed that they were ready to walk out the gates. Be safe, little princess, he said like he would tell her when she was a little girl as she walked past him. Ebony smiled bitterly. You too, she whispered. Take care of her, warned Captain Geralt. Boris nonchalantly shrugged his shoulders. Best I can, he quipped. Not pleased with Boris's answer, Captain Geralt ordered the castle gates closed. The sun was dropping into the west. Boris squinted at the sun. We have maybe 4 hours of daylight left. I want to put as much distance between us and the castle that we can before we have to camp for the night. Tell you what, said Ebony. Let's shift and fly away. We can be at least 50 miles or more from here by the time the sun sets, instead of 15 to 16 miles. Actually, we might be able to walk 20 miles if we are lucky, but that will be pushing it. No, said Boris. I am not shifting where they can see me. Use my spear as a walking stick. You're going to need it. He handed the spear to Ebony. Ha! Whatever you think. I will carry it if you don't think your weak butt can handle one more thing. Ebony roughly took the spear from Boris. You're so skinny you will probably die before the week is over. Boris started walking down the main highway. Ebony turned around for just one last look at the castle she had grown up in. She could see Captain Kurukul's elite soldiers watching her every movement on top of the castle wall. Up in the middle of them stood Davin. They held eyes for a moment. Ebony raised her hand with the spear in it as she mockingly saluted him. Davin smirked at her. He turned and made some comment to the soldier, and she watched as they both laughed. Ebony caught up to Boris. Where are you taking me? We can't go down the main highway to Halua. He shrugged his shoulders. We won't be on the main road for long. I have a bad feeling we will have company soon.